So the other day I watched a video of someone talking about the Enochian calendar, and it piqued my interest. And then I watched a couple of other videos also about people talking about the Enochian calendar. And I came to the realization that people do not truly understand the Enochian calendar, as they are basically only using one half of it. The Enochian calendar is much more complicated than what we think. Now, what we do know about the Enochian calendar is that it has 364 days in a year. The year is divided into 4 equal seasons of 91 days each. Each season consists out of 3 months. The first 2 months of the season have 30 days, and the third month has 31 days. Each season, therefore, has 30 plus 30 plus 31, 91 days. Now, here is a little bit where tradition comes in as well. Now, every single year starts on the exact same day of the week, which is traditionally a Wednesday, the day the sun, moon, and stars were created in Genesis. This meant that the religious holidays never drifted and always fell on the same exact weekday every year. Now, I don't 100% agree with this because the Book of Enoch doesn't actually mention this. This is a tradition from the Essenes. What I do agree with them is that the year began on a Wednesday, which is the day the sun, the moon, and the stars were created. But what I'm also going to show from the Book of Enoch is that Enoch used the full moon calendar, and that on this Wednesday, when the moon was created, it was full, because the Bible does say that God created the sun to give us light in the day, and the moon to give us light during the evening. And when the moon is full, it rises in the east as the sun is setting in the west, and it remains full for the whole night. Whereas if you use the Babylonian calendar, when the moon can be seen with the setting sun, the sun sets, and within 20 minutes the moon sets as well, and it is gone for the whole night. Now, God would have not created it like that. He would have created it to give its light for the whole night. So instead of using complex mathematical geometry, the Book of Enoch explains the movement of the sun and moon through a physical architectural metaphor. The horizon features 6 eastern portals where the sun rises and 6 western portals where the sun sets. And this is just something that later on would become the 12 tribes or the 12 constellations, 12 signs of the Mazzaroth. And throughout the year, the sun moves progressively from one portal to the next, spending exactly 30 or 31 days rising from a specific portal before shifting. This tracks the shifting positions of the sun along the horizon between the summer and winter solstices. Enoch was a very unique individual. He's one of the very few people that never died and that was taken by God. So he had a very unique relationship with Jesus. And here you can see Enoch standing alone on a pathway, looking at everybody using his calendar incorrectly. Everyone says that the Enochian calendar is a solar calendar, and it is, but it's so much more. The Enochian calendar is a lunar solar calendar, and the Book of Enoch proves it. Enoch's calendar is much more complex than what people think. They just took the part that they understand and they ignored the rest of it. But if you read in 1 Enoch 73, you will see the role of the moon in the Enochian calendar. Verse 1. And after this law I saw another law dealing with a smaller luminary, which is called the moon, and her circumference is like the circumference of the heaven, and the chariot in which she rides is driven by the wind, and light is given to her in definite measure. And her rising and setting change every month, and her days are like the days of the sun, and when her light is uniform, that would be full, or maybe empty, it amounts to the seventh part of the light of the sun. Okay, now this is where it becomes important. Verse 4. And thus she rises, and her first phase, now that would be the beginning of the month. First phase is always in the beginning of the month. In the east comes forth on the 30th morning, and on that day she becomes visible, and constitutes for you the first phase of the moon on the 30th day, together with the sun, in the portal where the sun rises. Now have a look at this. Okay, so we've seen that her first phase is in the east. The first phase is the beginning of the month. So currently the Babylonian calendar has the month beginning on a new moon or the dark moon. And people that follow the full moon, like myself, we have the month beginning on the full moon. And the first phase is the beginning of the month. So they say that new moon is the first phase, and we say the full moon is the first phase. But you can see from the Enochian calendar, Enoch's calendar, that the first phase is in the east, not the west. So you can see the phases of the moon. When it sets in the west with a setting sun, it is a dark moon. When it rises in the east, it is a full moon. And Enoch himself says that the first phase is in the east, and that indicates a full moon. So the first phase is when the moon is full. So the Enochian calendar begins its 364-day count on the spring equinox, but its months begin on the first full moon after the spring equinox, which is also the same as the star Abib back in those days. But you can see that the Enochian calendar is not as simplified as people make it, because people just took the part that they understood and they ignored the rest. And you can't do that. Okay, what is interesting here, it comes forth on the 30th morning. Now, everyone that's been following my videos should already be clued in as to where this is leading. Okay, so Enoch says, and the first phase in the east comes forth on the 30th morning. Now, over here we have the Nisan 14 calendar. Here we have New Moon Day. Now, New Moon Day is day 30 of the previous month. So you can see that this is the last day of the previous month, and that evening when the moon rises, it is New Moon Night. But New Moon Day begins in the morning on the 30th day of the previous month. So he says, in the first phase on the east, and in the east we know it's full moon, and it's the 30th morning. And on that day she becomes visible. So when the moon rises, when the day at dusk, and you can then see the new moon day, you can see the full moon, and it constitutes for you the first phase of the moon. That's the beginning of the month on the 30th day, together with the sun in the portal where the sun rises. Now the portal again would just be one of the constellations, Mazzaroth, and the next day would be the first. So it's very clear that Enoch is referring to the Nisan 14 calendar, specifically the Nisan 14 calendar. The 30th day is New Moon Day. So the Enochian calendar begins its 364 year or day count for the year on the spring equinox, but its first month began on the first full moon after the spring equinox, or the star Abib was sighted. And day 30 is New Moon Day, and the next day is the first day of the month. So this is undeniable. If you read Enoch correctly and you apply what you read, you can see that his calendar is much more complicated than what everyone believes that it is, and that it follows the full moon specifically. This is just a quick representation of the 12 portals, which would at the later stage represent the 12 tribes of Israel, and also the 12 constellations or the 12 signs of the Mazzaroth. Okay, to continue with verse 5, and the one half of her goes forth by a seventh part, and the whole circumference is empty, without light, with the exception of 1/7 part of it and the 14th part of a light. So one half of her goes forth. This is halfway through the month. The moon is dark without light. You can see one half of her goes forth by a seventh part, and our whole circumference is empty, without light. So that halfway through the month, it is the dark moon, or as the Babylonians would call it, the new moon, but it's actually the dark moon. And this is just an explanation of the strength of her luminosity. So basically, when the moon is full, she shines with the strength of the sun. And when the moon is dark, she shines with 1/7 strength of what she does when she is a full moon, which is then a 14th part of her light. So you can basically just see that this just goes through the cycle of the month, a lunar month, beginning with a full moon and ending with a full moon. And if we continue from there, verse 7, and she sets with the sun. And this would be now continuing from halfway into the month onwards. And when the sun rises, the moon rises with him. And that would be the dark moon. and receives the half of one part of light, and in that night, at the beginning of the mornings, in the commencement of the lunar day, the moon sets with the sun, and is invisible that night, with the 14th part and the half of one of them. So basically you can see the red, that's my commentary here. She sets with the sun, meaning that the moon is now halfway through the month cycle and is invisible at night, and basically 14 to 14.5 days. And then verse 8, and she rises on that day with exactly a seventh part, and comes forth and recedes from the rising of the sun, and the remaining day she becomes bright in the remaining 13 parts. So that is just from halfway in the month when the moon is dark and without light, the moon slowly becomes full again and the cycle repeats. So 1 Enoch 73 proves the existence of that. Enoch followed the full moon calendar, but he went into more detail with the seasons and the 12 portals. But people only use one half of the calendar, and then they think they can make correct deductions from that, which is a little bit insane to me. Okay, so to briefly recap, Enoch measured the year from equinox to equinox. Months began the day after the full moon was sighted. This is identical to the Nisan 14 calendar, where the full moon is new moon day, and the day after the full moon is the first day of the month. So therefore we can say if the months began at the full moon, then it's logical that Nisan would begin the day after new moon day on the first full moon after the spring equinox or the star Abib was sighted. Now I have been ignoring the 364-day part of Enoch's calendar because it is no longer applicable to today. Today our year length, the tropical year length or the actual year length, is 365.2422 days. So there's a discrepancy, and we have to work out why there is a discrepancy, because I do not believe that Enoch was incorrect. Okay, so we know that Enoch's calendar had 364 days in a year, and today we have 365.2422. So we have 1.2422 days extra. So now we have to assume that Enoch, who was completely filled with the wisdom, knowledge, and truth of Jesus, could not count from one equinox to the next. And I believe that to be an impossibility. So I assume that when Enoch lived, the years truly only had 364 days. And this video and the next one, although the next one will be more to do with the physics of it, try to show you that this is indeed the case. So a lot of people would say that Enoch made a mistake, but I believe it to be an impossibility. You cannot be filled with the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of Jesus, our God Jesus, the Spirit of truth, knowledge, wisdom, and make such a basic mistake. And he did not make a mistake at all. Okay, so the difference between our tropical year currently and Enoch's year is 1.2422 days, or 1 day, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. Now, I'm working on an assumption that Enoch wasn't wrong, and I'm trying to prove that in this video, which means that the tropical year has increased since the time of Enoch by 1 day, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. Something happened, obviously. Something must have happened to affect these changes. And I believe that the answers are to be found in the Bible. Okay, so today we know that the universe is expanding, and it is through the Hubble Space Telescope that we realized that the universe was expanding. Previously, or in earlier days, physicists like Albert Einstein did not believe in the expansion theory, although he later on admitted his mistake, and he was quite proud to say that he now believes in expanding universe theory, which basically brings you sort of to the Big Bang. And Einstein said that he liked the idea of the universe being created through a Big Bang. But there are still various theories out there, and physicists have tried to explain the mathematical formulas by inventing things like dark matter, which it's just a theoretical concept. It hasn't been proven. But there are other theories out there as well that are mathematically sound and that hasn't been disproven. And basically, if you look at the universe as a balloon that is expanding, so the point here is that there isn't a center point from which everything is expanding. Everything is moving apart at the same rate. And those galaxies towards the end, the furthest away, towards on the surface of the balloon over here, are expanding moving away from us faster, so they're accelerating. And the balloon theory explains that fairly in a very comprehensive way, that the distance between, the further you get to the edge of the balloon and you inflate the balloon, the distance increases more than it would towards the center of the balloon. I hope this makes sense to you. The balloon is small. If you take all these balloons and you place them within one another, so it's a three-dimensional universe. So it's one balloon within, all of them are within one another. So that universe or galaxy, that galaxy in this balloon, when it inflates, only moves a smaller portion than what the galaxy on the end of this balloon would move for the same inflation or expansion. So there are interesting theories out there, and they haven't been disproven at all. And one of these theories, and this is what I will go into, I'm trying not to go into this video because I don't want to bore you guys to death. But one of these theories is that not only is space expanding, but matter itself is expanding as well. So it is basically a situation where, to make it very simple, that say tomorrow I'm double the size. Of course, I would realize it, but if the room I'm sitting in is double the size, and my house is double the size, and the earth is double the size, and a pen is double the size, and a ruler is double the size, then it cancels out. You can't really say that anything has increased in size. The only thing that would have now increased in size is the distance from one galaxy to the next. And that basically would explain expansion theory in a very simplified way. So everything increases in size. So if you take a galaxy here, you can see maybe one there, and it's 1 centimeter across one day, and the next day it's 2 centimeters across, and this one over here is also 1 centimeter across, and the next day it's doubled in size, it's 2 centimeters across. But the distance between them was 10 centimeters, and the next day that would be 20 centimeters. So what this balloon theory also proves is that the rate of space, the expansion of space, is more than the rate of the expansion of matter, because all matter are clumped together in galaxies, which would be then similar in a sort of way to the small balloon. And that would explain, it fits perfectly into the balloon theory. And there is actually, the mathematics is sound. A lot of physicists don't like it. They've tried to bring in, but the strong the weak nuclear force between atoms would change and everything. But again, everything changes, including gravity. But because the change is constant all over, it is you cannot measure it, you cannot see it. All we know is that the universe is expanding. So Joshua's long day may be understood as a localized space-time event. During this event, the passage of time was extended only for Joshua's army and the Earth, while the remainder of the physical universe was effectively frozen. So this is basically what happened, but this is complicated because Earth experienced an additional 24 hours while the external universe did not. The spatial and temporal relationship between Earth and the rest of the system couldn't simply remain unchanged. The Earth and its orbital path therefore underwent a permanent increase in scale corresponding to an additional day. So once the event ended, the rest of the universe resumed from its unchanged state, while the Earth continued from its permanently enlarged spatial and orbital configuration. Thus, the local relationship within the Earth-Sun system remain effectively unchanged, but the length of Earth's orbital year was permanently increased by 1 day. So you have space-time, that is not two separate things. To move through space requires time. So if you move from point A to point B, that involves time, and that is space-time. So you cannot change one aspect of it without affecting the other one. So when God froze everything but allowed time to move on Earth, that movement of time would also have to affect that local space, which basically at that point, while the whole universe was frozen, the Earth increased in size slightly. I've worked that out, it's about 0.2 of a percent. And because mass changes, then the gravitational forces would change, and that would indicate that to remain in balance, that the orbital path of the Earth around the Sun would be increased, and that would be effectively a permanent increase of a day. So when God created an extra day for Joshua, it permanently increased the calendar by 1 day. And this is why I haven't been using Enoch's 364 days, because we cannot use it today. It was correct back when Enoch lived, but it isn't correct today anymore. So that's why I've been totally ignoring it. But I thought maybe I should just explain that there's a reason why I've been ignoring it. Because it's not applicable today, but obviously it was applicable during the time of Enoch. And there is physics, provable physics, that prove how God did this, that show how God did this. And, you know, God is the creator and He's almighty. And for Him to do this is absolutely nothing. He probably didn't even have to really think about it. It's just, you know, God is within everything that exists and within everything that doesn't exist. In other words, like the quantum, He's the God of all possibilities. He can do whatever you want at a whim. So that is basically a simplified explanation of how Joshua's extra day was created. But of course, we still have a little bit of extra time, not just 1 day. I've just engaged in some self-sabotage. I just got myself a glass of Coke, and then now when I start recording, I get a burp and then I have to re-record. So that's a little bit of self-sabotage there. But anyway, so here you can see the Sun and the Earth and its orbital path around the Sun, and this was now during the time of Enoch. And this would have been what happened during the time of Joshua when the extra day was created. So the whole universe, everything was frozen, so it's basically heaven time, as I like to call it, God's time. And God allowed heaven time to occur on Earth. So you can see that the orbital path is slightly increased to what it was, and the Earth has slightly increased in mass. Now, with the balloon expansion theory, everything increases in mass proportionally. Everything increases. So gravity, the strong and weak nuclear forces, everything increases at the same constant rate. So nothing changes between them except distance. So you can see now that there's the new orbital path. And the reason why the orbital path was changed is because the Earth increased in mass, so it became bigger, but the path that it follows around the Sun is where it would be in space at different times. So this is a space-time orbit, you might as well say. So last month the Sun was there, the Earth was there, and next month it would be here. So this is all related to its space-time position, for lack of a better description. So the universe's large-scale expansion normally proceeds with cosmic time. So time equals movement. If you don't have time, you don't have movement. Everything was frozen, there is no movement. But there was movement on Earth. So Earth allowed time to continue, or God allowed movement on Earth to continue. And that meant that the Earth was expanding at its normal rate according to the balloon theory. So if God froze time for the universe could not have increased in size during the time it was frozen. But time on Earth was not frozen, then the Earth would have expanded at its usual rate, causing an increase in its orbital path. And this is just the space-time. So that the orbital path would have increased because at different times the Earth would be in that space over there. Therefore, to preserve the consequences of the ongoing expansion, the spatial time itself would have to change during the frozen interval. So the orbit of the Earth around the Sun was permanently increased by 1 day. So Enoch's calendar was not incorrect. So Enoch had 364 days. There was 1 day for Joshua added, which brings us to 365 days. But the tropical year we have today is 365.2422 days. So this leaves 0.2422 days, or 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. Then we have to ask, is there another case where God changed time in the Bible? And there is. And it is interesting to me that there are only 2 cases where God changed time in the Bible, and both of them fit by adding the added time to Enoch's calendar. Now we're looking at King Hezekiah's sundial, and we're reading from 2 Kings 20 verse 11. And Isaiah the prophet cried unto the Lord, and he brought the shadow 10 degrees backwards, for which it had gone down in the dial of Ahaz. The dial of Ahaz is also called the stairs, or translated as the stairs of Ahaz. But I want to look at the word degrees here. So you can see it's Strong's H4609, and here we have the outline of the biblical usage. And this is what it means. What comes up, thoughts. But to go up requires stairs. And it is physically also a step or stay. You can see it there. Steps of a sundial. Stories of heaven requires steps. Ascent, that requires steps. Song of ascent, which requires steps. So we are going to be specifically looking at King Hezekiah's sundial. Here you can see a representation of what the staircase of Ahaz might have looked like. So King Hezekiah's sundial was called Ma'alot of Ahaz, and in Hebrew, you can see the Hebrew there, it's often translated as the dial of Ahaz or the staircase of Ahaz. And typically it would have 12 stairs or steps on each side. Each one would be half an hour, so you would have 6 hours there and 6 hours there. And the stairs themselves would be engraved, so you could do corrections between summer and winter when the days are longer or shorter. Sundials measure time using the sun. If it was calibrated to the equinox, then it would measure the days being exactly 12 hours long during the equinox. But days are longer in summer and shorter in winter. Advanced sundials would have taken this into consideration by having detailed engravings on the steps to ensure accuracy during the different seasons. So basically on a sundial, the sun would come up in the east, would cast a long shadow, and then as the sun progressed overhead, the shadow would be shortened, and in the afternoon the shadow would be short, and then would cast a long shadow as the sun is going down. God moved the sundial back 10 steps, and on a similar sundial than the one in the picture, this would represent 10 out of the 12 steps, which would be 5 hours if it happened on the day of the equinox. But we have 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. This is now the remaining time. So we've got Enoch's calendar of 364 days. We've got 1 day for Joshua, which brings us to 365. And now we've got this 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds. And it is longer than 5 hours. So we know that this event did not take place on the equinox, but that it must have happened during the summer. And in my next video, I am going to try and date this event, because there are certain things that happened with King Hezekiah during that time. And one of them was his illness, and another one was the invasion by the Assyrians, which typically would have invaded during summer, because that is the best time for invasions. So I will definitely try and place this event on the calendar. We know the current consensus is that it happened in 701 BC. So that would be a good starting point and to go from there. So we've seen that Enoch's calendar has got 364 days in a year. Each season of 3 months had 91 days. So originally, this means that originally the moon cycles must have been 30.33 days long instead of the 29.5 days we have today. So after 1 month, it's 30.33. That counts as a 30-day month. After the second month, it would be 60.66. Counts as a second month of 30 days. And after the third month, it would be 91 days, and that counted then as 31 days. And it's very interesting that a lunar cycle of 30.33 days gives a sidereal lunar cycle of exactly 28 days. Not 28.1, not 28.01, but 28 days. I found that to be fascinating. So my hypothesis is that when God froze time, okay, the universe expands. It's always expanding. We know that from the Hubble Space Telescope. But my hypothesis is that matter, and many physicists agree with this, that matter also expands, but because it's uniformly, you cannot measure it. And that matter expands at a slower rate than space itself. So the universe was frozen, and without movement through space, you cannot have time. So that is how time was stopped. But God allowed a localized time bubble on Earth, which meant that Earth would have expanded at the rate it normally would have if the universe wasn't frozen. So that increased its mass, which increased its orbital path around the sun by a day. And that is basically Joshua's extra day. It was a permanent extra day added in. And this is basically where the Nisan 15 calendar tries to, in an abstract way, prove the added day that was added in. But it is in an abstract way because this is our existence today. We have an extra day. But then we also have to look, and this is what I am going to be doing in the next video, at specifically the lunar cycle. Because if the Earth increased in mass, and its orbit around the Sun increased by a day, but the Moon's orbit around the Earth stayed the same, then because that was frozen, then that orbit is reduced. So that means instead of 30.33, it would be a reduced number, but it wouldn't be a massive or significant reduction, but there would be a reduction. But the real thing comes in with King Hezekiah, because with his event, it wasn't just time that was frozen, but time actually went backwards. And that is something very unique, and I still have to do a lot of thinking about that, because it would imply that the opposite happens to the normal situation that we have with expansion. But I do not believe that matter can be uncreated. So as it expands, I do not believe that it can contract again. So if that stayed constant, then it just complicates things a lot. But yes, space itself must have contracted during that period, and this was also a permanent change. So that would have affected the moon's orbit around the Earth as well, reducing it further, because we have to get from 30.33 to 29.5 days. But yes, that's basically this video for now. I firmly stand by my hypothesis that I believe that Enoch was 100% correct. The year was 364 days long when he was alive, but that God himself changed it by adding a day for Joshua and adding 5 hours and 48 minutes and 45 seconds for Hezekiah. Now, that adding there was taking time backwards by that period, but that would mean that it's still in the process of being looked at. So that will be in the next video. Maybe I'll leave the physics one for the one after that, because that one is going to be boring. But anyway, guys, that's it from me. Have a blessed day. God bless you, and goodbye.